one of the things that we mentioned earlier as a big part of an ingredient, if you will, in this balance of power, of course, is NIL. And that is kind of related in lockstep with the transfer portal. And, you're seeing guys transfer 3-4 times now during their career. Whether NIL plays a major part of that, I don't know that in most cases we're ever going to fully know the details, but it's for sure something that's going on in the background. Today, as we're recording this on June the 27th, the NCAA released kind of like a fortification to their policy on NIL, specifically targeting the rules and clarifying it around what to do with state laws, what to do with school foundations that are set up to offer incentives and NIL promises and stuff like that. The major issue is because the NCAA went into this with no sort of guidelines, no sort of hand-holding, they just made it the Wild West. Now every state has had to take it upon themselves to decide what their NIL laws are going to be. And, Luke, from where I sit, the NCAA kind of retroactively trying to have teeth to this NIL law, even to say that it trumps state law, seems like a disaster waiting to happen. As someone who covers recruiting and, is in the thick of whether it's these discussions or, seeing the fruits of donors, seeing the fruits of NIL collectives going to work, do you think the NCAA is ever going to actually get out ahead of this?
I think the way to get ahead of this is you're going to just have to continue, whether they choose to go through incrementalism and do this slow or try to slam it down. You've got to get towards a professional model if this is how it's going to be, because people say, coaches leave all the time and they can do all this. Well, they have contracts that have been professionally negotiated, and there's if this happens, then this. If this happens, there's a buyout. If this happens, you're allowed to do this
right,
or go here, whatever it is. And with these players, when we don't have contracts and don't have terms of agreement, I think we're really running around a big mess in the NCAA. You open Pandora's box, you don't just tell it all, to get back in there. And this seemed like an attempt to me that I'm sure, legally some of this is a little above my head here from the lawyer speak. But what I see is, hey, there's moves to be made with NIL, but going with the whole NCAA law, Trump state law, I think there were better things that could have been done at this point in the calendar. You could have maybe focused on some other stuff, to say the least. But I've seen with NIL, I've seen some things that have been really hard to watch. I've seen, when you have people transferring or moving around or flipping commitments, there are consequences, and usually you can't foresee them. There's adversity that usually you can't foresee. And, that much is obvious. So for some guys, right, I just worry about it because it seems like a clear idea, and they're good kids and they have good intentions and they're doing what's best. Sometimes it doesn't work, but I've also seen other times where walk-ons are able to pay their tuition through NIL and they're able to host camps for the community. So I've seen good things from it. I just think in terms of the organization of our sport, we've really got to get to see the contracts and if you leave, this is how this works. This is when this happens, how this happens. You sign the deal. You are here. You can't do this until here. You will make this much. That doesn't have to be public knowledge, but for the people that are in the athletics department, the coaches, the players, I think we're starting to maybe go down the right direction with these portal windows that we've had of you can't just randomly hop in at any time.
Yeah.
But we've got a long way to go. And I'm not sure how much this really did towards solving the root of the issues we're having.
Well, where I am here in Texas, the state has an NIL law that goes into effect on Saturday, right? So I think what you're saying is spot on from a timing perspective. I don't know that it gets more ineffective because at this point, the NCAA is playing catch up at such a monumental level. You have states that have passed NIL laws. You've got others like Texas that are. Some still have yet to hop on the bandwagon, but now, all the cookies are out of the jar, and to try and stuff everything back in and say, no, this is the way that it's going to be. We actually do know what we're doing. I I think they're going to drain their bank account if they, have to resort to legal action, which is kind of the only way I see that they get their solution implemented. So an absolute mess. With that, with the NCAA being so a lot of things, but ineffective is probably the best way to sum it up. You talked about the probably the best way to go forward is to kind of systemize some of these solutions, the transfer portal, systemize NIL, put some sort of standard out there. Is the only way that we get to that if universities start treating athletes like employees? Like, is it going to take that step in order to get kind of contracts solidified and some sort of net foundation put in place?
I think some kind of a CBA is in order, maybe overdue. Those kinds of collective bargaining I think there's even a point where the players dip into TV money. If you're getting these $1 billion plus TV deals and the players don't get a cut, like, I would have an issue with that if I'm a player. And I think that if the players were to get to the point where there is the collective bargaining, which Nick Saban and other people that are way smarter than I am have already talked about, so I don't have to hit on the points that they've already hit on, but they've talked about how we're leaning that direction. I think you start leaning that direction, you start saying, hey, this TV money starts, needs to look at maybe a 50-50 or a 40-something% of the athletes. Like, I would have an issue with that, and I think people will. And I think you kind of can raise that line as well to where a $60,000 deal in recruiting to a player isn't going to be that big of a deal because of the TV money that they might get. And I know some people say, oh, here we go, we're going even deeper into pro sports, but we've already crossed the line. Like,
right.
These are the things that we should have been talking about in 2021 if you didn't want to professionalize the sport. So we missed that boat. And I think if we're really trying to organize NIL, if we're not, we've been dealing with it. Some people love it. Some people hate it. I'm kind of indifferent on where it is right now from a personal standpoint, but I understand a lot of people want to organize it. Pretty much, most of the coaches I talk to would hope for that. And if we're headed that direction, I think we're looking at CBAs, TV deals, those kinds of things going forward, I think are where we're headed. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
It is. Yeah. I mean, Pandora's box is open. I think you said it. It is a little sad to me that, any sort of guise of amateurism is now well and truly gone. Whether, I think we've known for a long time that a lot of these guys are not amateurs, right? Whether however they were being compensated or they were being, taken advantage of before they were able to be, paid. The amateur model was not fair from a compensation standpoint. From a business perspective, not fair, but it did give us this guise of, hey, they play for the name on the front of their jersey, not the back, right? They love the tradition. They love the pageantry. Is it, if we continue to go down this professionalism model, which I think now, because we've dumped sand in the living room, I think the only thing you can do is build a sandcastle out of it. Do you think that ultimately turns college sports, at least college sports like football, like basketball, maybe even baseball, does that turn them into a minor league system for the pros? Or do you think that we've built something so special over the last 100+ years that college football as an entity will still retain those elements that have made it so beloved?
So in our lifetime, I don't think college football has really had an issue with the product, and I don't really foresee that happening. So I am a firm believer college football can stand alone, and there's things innately that make it different. For example, I'm from Atlanta. I didn't go to Atlanta Falcons University. Like, I grew up a Falcons fan, but, I didn't grow up in a community on a campus with these people and seeing their faces everywhere and watching their games and them being my age at the same time and really having those core memories. So that innately, to me, the community aspect is different. The aspect of, things as simple as a band, things as simple as your tailgates, your Saturday traditions. Every school's got different stuff. Dog walk. The things that, in college, guys give back. We've seen at Georgia, like For example, I'm a UGA kid, so I've seen the football players giving back to the community, whether it's food drives or reading to kids in the community. Like, not the NFL guys don't do that, but they have to serve a broader, for example, the Falcons serve like multiple states of fans even. So you look at a UGA or a Texas A&M and you look at what makes that unique. Sure, the football product is a huge part of it, but the product was always good. It's always going to be good, and it's probably getting better as we go because these athletes are starting younger, training harder, bigger, faster, stronger, the whole deal. Recruiting is getting more refined. It's getting sharper than ever. It's harder to miss kids than it ever has been. So because of those kinds of things, I think the product is good, the tradition's good, the community's built. So, yeah, it may be a minor league model of, hey, the guy's goal, it's always been to go to the pros if you're good. But now you're looking at the fact, okay, they're getting paid, there's compensation. Because we've transformed college football into this multi-billion-dollar product across the country, I think it's only fair that that was naturally to come. And when college football was a different world and there wasn't quite as much money involved and it could be amateur and that might be a little more fair, sure, that's a separate brand and a separate game than we have now. But with where it's going, I think it's the point where, yeah, things are changing, but what we love about the game, the community, the tradition, and the good product together, that big three combination, I think we're going to have that. And, as different as things get, at the core, we're still going to have what we love.
Gracious him. How about